Suburban Sentinel here with part 2 of 3 of the review of the outstanding Ruger GP100 357 Magnum Revolver. In this section of the review, we're going to be talking about logistics, or what I like to call the ilities: reliability, maintainability, durability, compatibility, etc., etc. First order of business, let's make sure that this weapon is clear, which it is. And I am again wearing gloves today. I'll show you the weapon's clear. And I am again wearing gloves today because just a couple days ago, I did a thorough cleaning on this. I don't know anything about the designers of this revolver, but if I had to guess, I'd say that one or more of the engineers grew up on a farm. And the reason I say that is that this revolver truly reminds me of a tractor. And that's a good thing. And that is that the gun appears from every aspect to be designed for extended periods of long, hard use with a minimal amount of fuss, and it was built to last. But let's take a closer look at the specifics of the logistics and engineering. First, let's look at reliability. There are going to be a whole bunch of things that are much more reliable than this GP100, such as gravity, the sun, death, taxes. In my opinion, the GP100 is not going to be as reliable as those, but pretty damn close. First, there's the inherent reliability of the revolver platform. There are fewer moving parts than your typical semi-automatic handgun, therefore fewer things to go wrong. And I see the cat's paw sneaking onto the camera here. That's Bella, my assistant. Second, the gun is overbuilt. We've talked about some of the enhancements that Ruger has made, such as the triple locking cylinder. In addition, all the internal components seem to be of very high grade and put together in a very durable fashion. I'm not a gunsmith, that's just my layperson's opinion. Third, the GP100 has a reputation for consistent reliability. I researched this gun very thoroughly before buying it as my wife's home defense gun, and I found very, very few complaints with this particular model. One thing that's noteworthy is a lot of GP100 owners opt to replace some of the springs and other internal components in the gun. Again, a lot of folks like to do trigger jobs, and I can understand that. Also, a lot of GP100 owners replace hammer springs. And I would just caution all owners and potential owners to be very careful when doing something like that. The stock GP100 has a fairly heavy hammer drop, and that's a good thing in my opinion in a self-defense gun, because there's very little chance of a light primer strike. So chances are when you pull the trigger, unless the round is completely bad, it's going to go off. If you replace the stock hammer spring with a lighter hammer spring, there's probably more of a chance of getting a light primer strike. And again, if it's a target gun, no big deal. But in a self-defense gun, I'm more concerned with the gun going off than having extraordinarily tight groups. And this cat with her white feet is hell-bent on making me clean this gun again. In sum, every time you pull the trigger on this GP100, it should be going bang. If not, chances are you either have some bad ammunition or there's something seriously wrong with the gun. In my humble opinion, the design is well proven and should be as close to perfect reliability as you can get in a handgun. Let's move on to maintainability. GP100 is typical of most 6-shot revolvers. You have 7 tubes to clean the barrel and 6 holes in the cylinder. When running dirty ammunition, I pay particular attention to the area underneath the extractor and the area in and around the forcing cone. It does take a fair amount of elbow grease to get these things really cleaned up, but I guess that's one more thing that keeps us out of trouble. Beyond routine maintenance, there should be very few, if any, repairs on the Ruger GP100 for many, many years. I'm not sure how many of you folks out there have actually taken your Rugers apart, but the revolvers are designed in a modular subassembly arrangement where there's a trigger group that can be taken off separately, etc., etc. Now, even though I'm a tinkerer by nature, I generally don't take my guns apart down to a detail strip level. Like most things, the devil is in the details, and I probably know just enough to be dangerous, and I don't want to monkey around with our defensive firearms. I want to leave that in the hands of a trusted professional. In fact, my wife and I have a setup with all of our guns where we rotate each one through a biennial inspection and maintenance program through our gunsmith. So at least every other year, the gun is professionally taken down, cleaned, inspected, and put back together and test fired. Yes, it does cost some money, but I can't think of a better way to spend it than have someone who really knows what they're doing perform a detailed inspection and cleaning of a self-defense weapon. And you are going to make me clean this gun again, aren't you? You see those white feet. Moving on to durability, again another strong point of the GP100. This weapon is completely overbuilt for its intended purposes. Just by the weight of it, it's 40 ounces for a mid to large size 357 Magnum. That's a big chunk of steel. Again, you have the full barrel underlug, the 3-point of contact cylinder lockup, the high quality components and the trigger mechanisms, etc. Here's a detail I think it's worth looking at. And here is the cylinder. Now you see here, let me get a pen. See here the cylinder flute, and then up here you have the cylinder notch. Notice that they're offset. Presumably the engineers did that so that the notch and the flute are not aligned to preserve the structural integrity of the cylinder. A really nice touch. Quite honestly, I don't know if that makes any difference at all. Other revolvers I have don't have that offset, and those revolvers have been 100% reliable as well. But it's just an attention to detail that I can almost see where the engineers were coming from in putting this weapon together. In summary, I'd be confident that you could shoot full house 357 Magnums until your arms fell off, and this revolver would just keep on trucking. This is a revolver that your great-great-grandchildren could be shooting. Let's move on to compatibility engineering, specifically and firstly human factors or ergonomics. And the first thing to note about the GP100 is it accommodates a variety of different shooters. This is a shrouded rather than a full tang grip, and it appears to me that is more narrow than revolvers of comparable size. Therefore, even my 5'2" wife can get a very good purchase on this gun. Just keep in mind that these are not the stock grips. The stock grips are a little bigger, the Hogue rubber ones, but they're pretty squishy, and my wife could get a real good handle on those. These Crimson Trace grips are harder, but she can still get a good purchase on the weapon despite its size. Another aspect of the human factors issue is the inherent simplicity in the double action revolver control setup. Really, there's just a few things to worry about. Trigger, hammer, cylinder, and the cylinder release. You don't have to worry about slide stops and decockers and manual safeties. One thing I think is worth mentioning that's not on the gun, and that is an internal trigger lock. Some of the newer revolvers have those little key locks that you can lock the gun with. I absolutely abhor those things, and I don't think I'd buy a revolver with one on it. And fortunately, as far as I know, the GP100s do not have that particular function. Size and weight are another issue. As far as recoil control, the heavy frame and the large grips, especially the stock Hogue grips, are terrific at taming the recoil. Now again, my wife is about 5'2", and in the stock configuration, she had no problem shooting full house 357 Magnums. And we go to the range, I like her to fire at least half a box of the real hot stuff, because that's what she keeps in the gun when it's in her nightstand. And the recoil control is excellent. Also, even though the gun is relatively heavy, it's very well balanced and easy to get on target and return to target after firing. Of course, the size and weight don't lend easily to carrying the gun, especially concealed carry, but I know a number of people who do. Personally, I wouldn't carry the GP100 simply because I would have to carry it concealed, which could be an issue based on its size, and I prefer my carry guns not to have an exposed hammer spar. But if I could open carry, I would be real tempted to make this one of my everyday carries, especially in the winter. Let's move on to interoperability, or a big fancy way of saying how versatile is the gun. And the 357 Magnum shines here as well, because not only can you fire the 357 of every power imaginable out of this GP100, one can also fire 38 Special plus P and good old-fashioned 38 Special. Using 38 Special cartridges is a cost-effective means of having some fun plinking or getting a little practice with the gun. Being able to use 38 Special plus P is, in my opinion, a viable defense round for someone who's otherwise too recoil sensitive for shooting 357 Magnums. Then finally, there's the advantage of having one gun that can fire a variety of ammunition. So in case there's a shortage or ammunition is scarce, that is an advantage, assuming that you have one of the three different types. Moving on to accessories, the GP100 is not the easiest gun to accessorize for those looking to do so. That said, there are a wide variety of grips available, including these Crimson Trace laser grips. Also, replacement front sights are easy to find and fairly easy to install. We opted, in this case, for a tritium-based front sight. I can't remember if this is Meprolite or Trijicon. And the gun has been in production for quite some time now, so that holsters are pretty easy to find. On the downside as to accessories, the GP100 does not come tapped for scope and has no rails on it and no provisions for rails, if that's your thing. I'm not a hunter, so that really didn't make any difference to me. As to other potential modifications, you see here up close the back of the cylinder. I have not looked into this, but an interesting modification I would at least consider if I were to carry this gun would be to have the face of the cylinder relieved for the use of moon clips. Now, I'm not sure if that's possible or advisable. I haven't looked into it. I think I will, even though I'm probably not going to do it on this particular weapon. I'd just like to know if it can be done for faster reloads. I'm not a big fan of speed loaders. I find them fairly awkward, and it's probably because I'm, one, a klutz, and two, left-handed. To me, a moon clip would be a lot easier. But I will look into that, and if anybody knows anything about GP100 cylinder modifications, just give us a shout. I'm sure we'd all like to hear about it. So that concludes part 2 of 3 of the Ruger GP100 357 Magnum review. In the final part, we'll look at how this gun fits into a gun enthusiast's life. So thanks for watching. Please subscribe. This is the Suburban Sentinel. Safe shooting, everybody.